Hello, everybody, and welcome to part C of video 5. My name is Andy Menon. In this video, we are going to learn about how the data context feature of UiPath Apps is used to delete records from the backend data service entity that's been integrated with our app. So let's get started. We start from where we left off in the part B video. At this point, the user has already identified a record from the backend data service that is of interest to that user. And that record has already been populated to this update area of the single page app that we have been working with over the past few videos. And we can see that this area of the form is now visible. In this current circumstance, this record is going to be deleted, and therefore we'll look at how this functionality works. Also to note that this app could have been designed to delete this record right here with the single click of this delete button, but a real world application will ask for a confirmation before such a critical operation can occur. And therefore, this app will also do the same. As a result, the actual delete operation would be performed in a separate form once the user clicks on this delete button that you see here. Therefore, let's start by going into the functionality behind this delete button. We're back in Studio, and let's get straight into the functionality of the delete button. Please note that this form that you see here is a separate page that is running inside of this page container, and therefore we'll have to navigate to the form that this page container is associated with. So the name of the form is DC survey update form. So we navigate to the update form, click on delete, and then get into the events. So the first thing that the app does is hide the update section, and it uses this hide update form app variable to do it. We talked about this in the previous video. So this variable is set to true. What that does is when the user clicks on the delete button, the entire update section of the form that was previously visible is hidden before this form shows up. And the next thing that happens, as you just saw, is the delete survey form that you see here on the left in the Explorer opens up. So the difference between the conventional app that we built previously and this app is that this form opens up as a model popover form, meaning it hovers above this single page app and blocks out the interaction with the parent app. And this form becomes the focus of attention, right? So unless we cancel this form out, we cannot really interact with the rest of the app. Now, at this point, you can see that the very same record that was selected is also been populated here, right? And therefore, we want to see how that was made possible. Going back into the app design, we go into the delete form, and this is the form that performs the actual delete operation. So we go into the delete form, and here is the delete form that you just saw that was hovering above the main app. And there are many number of expressions here, and they are all actually tied to the form with the help of a data context. And this data context has been applied to this form as well. In the previous video, we saw how this data context was applied to the update form. Now, the very same data context with the very same condition has been applied to this delete form. And therefore, all the controls that you see in this form are easily bound to the data fields of that selected record in the data context by directly referring to the data context of this delete form. So that is important because any data context is identified by the parent container it is bound to. And in this case, that container is the delete survey form. So if I hover on this text column, and if I go into the data context, here is the name of the form and the data context that's bound to it. And just like as we saw in the previous video, the fields that are required to be visible on this form are bound by dragging each of these attributes to their respective label controls. In this case, this is an expression that concatenates the first name and the last name. The difference is that you are using the references to the data context instead of using app variables. Similarly, we have the favorite skill, the days of the week, and the response ID. The response ID is the unique ID of this record in the data service. Now, at this point, the user can prefer to delete the record or reject the delete record operation, right? In that case, what happens is when the user clicks no close, this form is restored back, meaning it was invisible and now it's rendered visible. So if we jump into the functionality of this button, all it does is close the popover form, basically the delete form that had opened up as a popover form, by calling this rule, close popover form. So what happens is if this rule is called within a parent form, that parent form is closed. And in this case, the delete form is closed. And again, the var hide update form is used to set this variable to false, right? And once that happens, the hide attribute of the update section becomes false. And therefore, this particular section of our app is rendered visible. And we already saw how that was done in the previous video. Now, let us imagine that we are going to delete this record and we hit delete again. As usual, the form pops up. This time, we are going to perform the actual delete. Going back to the functionality of the delete form, we get into the yes, delete button. And in this case, again, when the delete operation is in progress, this is where the actual delete happens. The update section of the form is hidden again by setting this variable, this app variable, to true. And then this time we invoke the delete entity record rule. Now, this is the same delete entity record rule that we have seen in previous videos, but the difference is that when we are going to be deleting a record, we are going to refer to that record from the data context. So we go to the data context, we look at the data context of the container, and we drag this entity here into this field. So repeating that, and that's pretty much how you perform a delete operation using the data context. Every other step following that, all the events that are tied to what happens after the delete operation is complete, and what happens if by any chance there is an error, all of these configurations are same as what you saw previously. And therefore, there isn't much different here, except any variables that you're going to be referring to in your error messages. For example, in this error message, the app is informing the user that a record with a certain ID could not be deleted, and the ID of that record is being referred to using the data context. Therefore, any data field that you're referring to for your entity, that must be referred to from the data context. And once the record has been deleted and the app has notified the user that the delete operation has been successful, we invoke the close popover sheet rule, which closes the delete form. And then we set the variable, the var hide update form, to true. The reason being that the record has now been deleted from the data service, and in the process has also been removed from the data context, right? Which means that this section of the form has to be hidden. And it is obvious because now the record has been removed from the backend data service, and therefore it is not visible in this table control anymore. The record selected by the user previous to the delete operation has now been removed, and therefore this section of the application has no reason to be visible, and therefore it is rendered invisible. And at the beginning of the previous video, we discussed in detail about what that condition was and how it renders this section visible or invisible. And there you have it. That's pretty much how the data context functionality is used to delete a record from the backend data service. So in the next video, we'll wrap up video 5 by looking at data context update operation. And we'll also be briefly touching upon the steps to create a new record. And that is all for this video. If you like this content, please do like and subscribe to my channel. I'll truly appreciate your support. Thank you, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.